If you don't like it, then file for divorce. She delivered the words like a challenge, as if daring me to make one wrong move. 8 years together, and suddenly everything we built felt abruptly exposed like a fragile stack of cards she could scatter whenever she felt. My name is Evan. I'm 31, a diesel mechanic at Westerhill Freight's maintenance yard in Columbus, Ohio. I've been buried in engines since I was 19, ever since my father got me my first apprenticeship at a trucking outfit that folded years ago. I met my wife, Brooke, when I was 23. She worked as a receptionist at a nearby dental office, bright smile, quick laugh, the kind of woman who made you believe you could become better by standing in her orbit. Or at least, that's what I believed back then, but the fractures didn't appear overnight. They crept in. She'd come home late, claiming she'd been out with her friends. Then, friends narrowed to one friend. Then one friend turned into a name I didn't know. Eventually, that name belonged to a man. Derek. That I found out who he was the night I came home early from a double shift. He sat on my couch like he owned it, drinking a beer from my refrigerator, eyes glued to a basketball game playing on my television. Brooke moved around him as if nothing about the scene was wrong. "This is Derek," she said, unfazed. "We work out together at the gym." That I shook his hand because instinct kicked in before sense could. His grip was firm, controlled, and his smile looked staged, too polished, too deliberate. I told myself I was overthinking it, that Brooke had always been social, that fatigue was twisting harmless things into threats, but those shadows I kept dismissing only grew darker. She started texting at all hours, laughing quietly at her phone during dinner, slipping into the other room to take calls with the door closed. When I asked who it was, she rolled her eyes like I was a child asking why the sun rises. "Derek's just a friend," she said. "You're being ridiculous." Maybe I was. Maybe I wasn't. But the night she told me she was taking a week-long trip to a Florida beach resort with him, just the two of them, I felt something shift. Not in her. In me. "You're seriously going?" I asked. "Yes," she said, zipping her suitcase like the decision had never once been up for discussion. "And if you don't like it, file for divorce." She walked out before I could answer. Her car rolled down the driveway, taillights fading into the dark, and I stood alone in the kitchen staring at the empty space where her keys always hung. That's when it hit me, not a suspicion, not a guess, but certainty. I'd been making excuses for Brooke far longer than I had ever wanted to admit. When we first got married, everything felt steady and real. We bought a small house in a quiet neighborhood, nothing extravagant, just a 2-bedroom place with a fenced yard and a garage big enough to hold my tools. She told me she loved it. Told me it felt like home. But somewhere along the line, home stopped being enough for her. She started complaining about the neighborhood, too dull, too quiet, too far from anything exciting downtown. She wanted something nicer, something livelier, someplace filled with restaurants and nightlife. I told her we'd have to save more first. She didn't like hearing that, then she began criticizing my work. Said I came home smelling like grease and diesel. Said I never took her anywhere worth remembering. Said I was always too worn out to have fun. I tried explaining that the overtime was for us, for the house, for the future, for the life we were trying to build. She brushed it off. "You're always working," she'd say. "It's like you love those trucks more than me." I never knew how to answer that. So I kept working, kept trying, kept hoping she'd eventually see what I was doing and why. She didn't. The late night started around 2 years ago. She joined a gym across town and began going every evening after work. I thought it was good for her. She seemed lighter, more energetic, more confident. I should have asked more questions. The first time she mentioned Derek, I barely noticed. Just another name buried in a story about her workout routine. But then the name kept returning. Derek said this. Derek showed me that. Derek thinks we should try this new class that I met him that night on my couch, and something in my gut tightened. He was tall, lean, and carried the kind of effortless charm that made people trust him even when they shouldn't. Brooke laughed at everything he said. She touched his arm when she talked, looked at him the way she used to look at me. I told myself I was imagining it. But the texts didn't stop. The calls didn't stop. The late nights didn't stop. And every time I tried to talk to her, Brooke acted like I was the issue. "You're so insecure," she'd say. "It's embarrassing." Maybe I was insecure, but I wasn't blind. The Florida trip was the final confirmation. No wife takes a week-long vacation with another man and calls it friendship. She knew that. I knew that. The only thing left was deciding what I was going to do about it. She left on a Saturday morning. I stood in the driveway and watched her pull away, her suitcase already packed in the trunk, her sunglasses perched on her head like she was leaving for a glamorous getaway instead of walking into betrayal. "I'll call you when I land," she said through the open window. She didn't. For the first 2 days, I tried to act normal, went to work, came home, cooked dinner for one, sat on the couch, and stared at whatever happened to be on the television without really absorbing any of it. But by the third day, something inside me shifted. I started moving through the house, not searching for proof, I didn't need any more of that, but seeing everything with new eyes. The wedding photos on the mantle. The dishes we'd chosen together at a department store in Indianapolis. The blanket her mother crocheted for us when we first moved in. Every piece of it felt like a lie now. On the fourth day, I called a buddy from work, Hank, who'd survived his own divorce a few years earlier. He showed up with a six-pack and sat beside me on the back porch while I told him everything. "What are you going to do?" he asked. "She told me to file for divorce if I didn't like it," I said. "So that's exactly what I'm going to do." Hank nodded slowly. "You sure about that?" "Yeah," I said. "I'm sure." The next morning, I called a lawyer, Patricia, a sharp, no-nonsense woman who ran a small practice downtown. She didn't bother with pity or soft landings. She told me what I needed to know, guided me through every step, and had the paperwork prepared by the next afternoon that I signed the documents at her desk on a Thursday. My hand didn't shake, my voice didn't crack. I simply signed my name and pushed the papers back across the table. "You'll need to serve her," Patricia said. "Or she can sign voluntarily when she returns." "She'll sign," I said. "She asked for this." I went home and started packing her things. Not in anger, not in spite, just with a steady, methodical calm, her clothes, her shoes, her makeup, her jewelry. The books she never finished, the magazines she scattered across every room. I folded each item neatly and placed everything in the suitcases we'd bought together for our honeymoon trip to Gatlinburg. When I finished, I set them by the front door. Then I sat at the kitchen table and waited. She was due back Sunday. That gave me 2 days to sit with my decision. 2 days to wonder whether I was making the right choice. But the doubt didn't stay long. By Friday night, I already knew I was finished. Not angry. Not resentful. Just done. Some doors close themselves. Others, you have to pull shut. She came home Sunday afternoon around 4 p.m. I heard her car roll into the driveway while I pretended to read a magazine in the living room, my eyes on the page, my mind nowhere near it. The engine stopped. A door slammed. Then the front door swung open, and there she was, tanned, glowing, smiling like she'd stepped off a victory stage. "Hey," she said, dropping her purse onto the entryway table. Miss me? I didn't answer. I simply looked at her. She walked into the living room, still carrying whatever high she'd brought back from Florida. Her hair was lighter from the sun, her skin carrying that golden glow you only get after days by a pool. She looked rested, almost too rested, like the entire week had unfolded exactly the way she wanted. The resort was amazing, she said, dropping onto the couch. You should have seen the beach. Crystal clear water. Perfect weather. Every single day. Sounds nice, I replied. She paused, studying me. You're being strange. What's going on? Nothing. Then why are you acting like this? Her tone sharpened. Like you're angry? I told you before I left, Derek and I are just friends. You need to stop with this jealousy. It's exhausting. I rose slowly and walked to the front door, pointing at the 2 suitcases resting against the wall. What's that? She asked. Your things. Her smile flickered, thin and unsure. What do you mean, my things? I mean everything you'll need when you leave. She let out a brittle laugh, disbelief flaring in her eyes. Evan, what are you talking about? I reached into my back pocket, pulled out the folded papers, and placed them in her hands. You told me to file the divorce papers if I didn't like you taking that trip, I said quietly, so I did. She stared at the papers as if they were written in a code she couldn't decipher. Her hand lifted slowly, took them, unfolded them with trembling fingers. Her eyes scanned each line, and I watched the color drain from her face. You're joking, she whispered. No, Evan, this is insane. You can't just. I can, I said. And I did. She looked up, confusion collapsing into disbelief, then into something colder, sharper, something that looked almost like fear. You actually signed these yesterday. Her voice cracked. But, no. You can't be serious. We've been married 8 years. You're really going to throw all of that away because I went on a trip with a friend? You told me to file, I said. Your words. Not mine. The smugness she'd carried earlier was gone. Not even her vacation tan could hide the panic rising in her eyes. I didn't mean it, she said. I was frustrated. You were being so controlling about the whole Derek thing, and, stop, I said. She froze. The room went still. I'm not doing this again. Not the arguments. Not the excuses. Not the way you twist things and make me feel crazy for noticing what's right in front of me. I'm done. Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. For the first time in years, she had no comeback. She sat there silently, staring at the papers like they were a verdict. I didn't say a word. I didn't have to. The document said everything. The truth was written clearly, no room for denial, no room for escape. The division of assets. The terms of separation. The timeline for finalizing everything. Patricia had done her job well. Bruck finally looked up at me. You planned all of this while I was gone. You gave me a week, I said. I used it. This isn't fair. Neither were the last 2 years. She flinched at that. What's that supposed to mean? It means I'm not stupid, Bruck. I saw the messages. I heard the late calls. I watched the way your whole expression changed every time his name came up. You think I didn't notice? We're just friends, she said, but her voice had lost its strength, its certainty. Then why didn't you ask me to come with you? Why didn't you ever suggest the 3 of us spend time together? Why were your meetings always private? Why did you get defensive every time I asked a simple question? Her jaw tightened. Because you were always accusing me of something. I was asking, I said. There's a difference. But you treated every question like an attack, like I was the problem for caring about my own marriage. She shot up from the couch, the papers wrinkling in her fist. You're overreacting. You always overreact. This is exactly why I needed a break. A break? I repeated. That's what we're calling it now. You're impossible to talk to. And you're impossible to trust. That hit her, hard. I saw it in her eyes, the flash of guilt she tried to bury under anger. You don't get to do this, she said. You don't get to throw me out of my own house. It is my house, I said. My name is on the mortgage. My paychecks made every payment. You stopped contributing 2 years ago when you quit your job to find yourself. Remember? Her face tightened, color shifting beneath the strain. That's not fair. None of this is fair, I said. But here we are. She stepped toward me, voice rising. I'm not signing those papers. You don't have to, I replied. The state of Ohio will grant the divorce after the mandatory separation period. Patricia already explained everything. Patricia? She blinked. You got a lawyer. You told me to file for divorce. Did you think I'd walk into that blind? Realization washed over her, slow and cold, like watching something fracture beneath ice. This wasn't a bluff. Not a threat. Not a warning that it was final. Evan, her voice dropped, almost pleading. We can talk about this. We can work it out. I'll stop seeing Derek. Please, just give me a chance. You had 8 years of chances, I said. And you spent the last 2 throwing them away. I'm done waiting for you to notice what you're losing. Her eyes filled. Whether the tears were genuine or another tactic, I couldn't tell anymore, and I didn't care. Take your suitcases, I said. Call whoever you need to call. But you're not staying here tonight. She tried everything in the hour that followed. First came the tears, raw, unfiltered, streaking down her cheeks as she begged me to reconsider. She said she loved me, said she'd made a mistake, said Derek meant nothing and she'd never see him again. I listened, silent and still. When she finished, I handed her a tissue and pointed toward the door. Then came the anger. She shouted that I was cold, heartless, that I was walking away from our marriage without even trying to fight for it. She hurled a pillow across the room, spat out insults, tried to ignite a reaction. I let her burn herself out. When she finally quieted, I picked up the pillow and placed it back where it belonged. Then came the bargaining. Counseling. A gym break. Deleting Derek's number in front of me. Promises to start over. To pretend the last 2 years never happened. To rebuild from scratch. It's too late, I said. Why? She demanded. Why is it too late? Because I don't trust you anymore. And I don't think I ever will. Something collapsed inside her at that. The fight evaporated from her body, leaving her drained, hollow. She sank onto the couch and stared at the floor. Where am I supposed to go? She whispered. That's not my problem anymore. I don't have anywhere to stay. Call your mother. Call your sister. Call Derek. I shrugged. You've got options, I said. She looked up at me, mascara streaked, her tan suddenly looking less like a glow and more like a stain, evidence of everything she'd been hiding. You really hate me, she whispered. No, I said. I just don't love you anymore. I grabbed her suitcases and carried them out to her car. She followed slowly, her heels clicking across the driveway like distant echoes. I loaded her things into the trunk while she watched, still processing the reality unraveling in front of her. When I shut the trunk, she reached for my arm. Evan, go, I said. Please. She searched my face for something, mercy, forgiveness, any trace of the man who used to give her endless chances. But whatever she was hoping to find wasn't there. She finally got into the car, started the engine, and sat with her hands frozen on the wheel. After a long moment, she backed out of the driveway and disappeared down the street that I stayed there until her taillights vanished around the corner. Then I went inside, closed the door, and locked it. The house felt quiet, quiet in a way it hadn't been in years. I sank onto the couch and exhaled a breath I didn't even know I'd been holding. That it was over. 3 months later, the court finalized the divorce. Brooke didn't contest a thing. She signed every document Patricia sent her without a fight, probably because her new attorney told her she didn't stand a chance. The house was mine. The savings, mostly mine, the only thing she walked away with was her car and whatever she'd gathered over the course of our marriage. A few mutual friends told me she moved in with Derek about 2 weeks after I put her out. They lasted 4 months. That he dropped her for someone younger. Apparently, the thrill of sneaking around didn't survive the reality of a real relationship. About 6 weeks after the divorce was final, her mother called me. She apologized for her daughter's behavior and explained that Brooke was struggling, sleeping on friends' couches, working part-time at a coffee shop, barely keeping herself afloat. Then she asked if there was any chance I'd reconsider. No, I said. She exhaled quietly, like she already knew the answer. I understand. Brooke never reached out. No calls. No texts. No desperate appearances at my door. I think it finally sank in that the bridge was burned to ash. There was nothing left to rebuild. When the divorce became official, the guys at work threw a small get-together at Hank's place. Nothing elaborate, just burgers, a couple of beers, and a few hours of peace. At one point, Hank lifted his bottle and said something I'll never shake loose. Here's to knowing your worth, he said, and never letting anyone make you forget it. I tapped my bottle against his and took a long drink. It tasted like freedom. A year went by. I kept the house, repainted the bedroom, tore out the carpet in the living room, and put down hardwood floors with my own hands. The place felt different, lighter, cleaner, like the walls had finally exhaled. I started dating again after 8 months. Nothing serious at first, just relearning how to be around someone new. Then I met Julia at a friend's barbecue. She was a nurse at a downtown hospital, kind, sharp, and unexpectedly honest. No mind games, no hidden tests, no quiet punishments. She spoke plainly, meant what she said, and didn't apologize for it. We took things slow. Neither of us needed to rush. About 14 months after the divorce, I ran into Brooke. She was behind the counter at the coffee shop her mother once told me about. She looked worn down, drained in a way no vacation tan could ever hide. The brightness she used to perform was gone, replaced by the dull weariness of someone who finally understood that choices have consequences. She saw me and froze. I nodded, ordered my drink, and walked out. No anger. No conversation. Just distance, earned and permanent. There was nothing worth revisiting. I thought about her occasionally, not with bitterness, but with clarity. She had gambled on the idea that I would stay no matter how far she pushed me, convinced my love came without limits, without boundaries, without conditions. She believed I wouldn't push back. She was wrong. Some lessons only land when they cost you something. Brooke lost a home, a husband, and a future she assumed would always be hers. I lost 8 years, and the version of myself that believed love alone could fix anything, but I gained something, too. I learned that walking away isn't weakness. Sometimes it's the strongest choice a person can make. That afternoon, I drove home with the windows down and the radio playing something old and familiar. Julia was coming over for dinner later. I'd picked up steaks and a bottle of wine. Nothing fancy, nothing loud, just a quiet evening with someone who made me feel like I finally mattered. The house came into view, and I pulled into the driveway. For the first time in years, it felt like coming home,